You need teammates, man. That's how you get through life. We decided to play 100 minutes. I'm sure the two teams would keep slogging it out for that long. We used to play our best when we had an element of fear. I love guys that, I saw and I could identify with, and they just went out and put their heart and soul into it and did their best for the team. Tana, he didn't need to always speak. When he did speak, it was powerful, and you listened and you took note. You feel like you're all on your own and you don't have your team around you, and you get stuck, and a lot of us do, and we feel like we just need help and we need a connection. So the first bit is getting that connection at altitude in the afternoon at Johannesburg or Pretoria. They were the ultimate test, and you knew they'd always go 80 minutes.
Everybody, and welcome to another episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast, where we explore the stories and insights that make great athletes great leaders. Today's guest is All Blacks legend and two-time Rugby World Cup champion Conrad Smith, aka Snake. From a law student who could barely bench 60 kgs to one of rugby's most intelligent centers, Conrad shares how coachability, culture, and shared leadership shaped his career. We also delve into his work off the field, championing player welfare and helping the next generation thrive both in sport and beyond. So let's go. Conrad, brother, welcome. Welcome to our show. How are you doing?
Good to be here. Lovely intro. I love the bench press reference too, because I've never recovered from that.
Well, if it's any consolation, I recently spoke to Jake White, the former Springbok coach, and he reminded me, almost didn't pick me because I couldn't even bench 100 kgs as a prop when I was 20 years old. So don't worry. Conrad.
Overrated exercise.
Awesome, man. Thanks for taking the time for joining us. Really looking forward to this chat. Ben, brother, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, G. Yeah, me too. Looking forward to it. How you doing? You
awesome, right? Awesome stuff. I'm great, man. It's been a crazy day. I had to treat myself to a milkshake at Five Guys here in La Rochelle. It was a mixture of banana, chocolate, and peanut butter. Just a long day and just need to keep everything balanced. I'm all about mindfulness at the moment. So, yeah, all good, man. But listen, Conrad, we're going to get stuck into it. We always start off our podcast. What is the one lesson from the game that you have learned that you can share with our audience, young rugby players and aspiring coaches?
Good way to start. Listen, I think the value of people, like the relationships you have, the connection that you have. I know, and I know we'll probably talk about transitioning, from playing and moving out, and I suppose working with those players as they finish the game, as we are all now in that position, and it's the thing you all miss. Everyone misses the connection, the teammates, the camaraderie that you have, and you're fortunate to experience that. And while you play, you focus on a whole lot of other things, and it's an amazing life, and you enjoy a lot of other parts. You enjoy winning, you enjoy traveling, you enjoy all those other unique and amazing parts of being a professional sportsman and a rugby player. But yeah, that connection piece, it's certainly what you value the most, and what you probably need to cherish, and that's probably the lesson is to make sure you do cherish those and guard them and keep them. And just because you stop playing, you as we now say, you leave one team, but you're just joining another team, and that's the team of retired players. And we're a big team, and but we need support. You need teammates, man. That's how you get through life. So I think there's a lot in that.
No, I totally agree with you. We recently had Morne Stein on the podcast, and he was telling the audience the story of that. We would come back from a 5-week tour, and then only to tell our wives, "Listen, here we've got a barbecue or bride this afternoon." But like, listen, you just spent 5 weeks with these boys. Why do you want to have a get together the same day that you arrive?
Today's Lessons from the Game episode was possible thanks to the support of Harris Begley Financial Planning, headed up by former Blackheath player Matt Begley. They are the experts to speak to for tailored advice on investments, mortgages, insurance and pensions, helping you plan for a future of financial security. So when you think money, think Harris Begley and head to www.harrisbegley.co.uk. Approver Quilter Financial Services Limited and Quilter Mortgage Planning Limited, March 2025.
So, and you know what, Conrad, the great thing about doing this podcast as well, I've reconnected with some of my former rivals as well, the good man Ali Williams and Owen and Charlie, and it's so great to reconnect, and we just want to first say, well done, an unbelievable career, always, and still have massive respect for you, not just as a player, but as a human being, person that you are, and this is it's unique. You're talking about connection. We speak a lot about that mutual respect between South Africa. And I don't know about you. I don't know what I'm going to do next year when it comes to the biggest clash of all titans, the rivals, the greatest rivals in history, facing down 4 test matches. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna prepare myself. I need to get a mental coach. I probably need to improve my fitness, and I don't know how I'm going to get through that. It's going to be emotionally draining. I don't know what your thoughts is on that.
No, I'm a bit the same. It's I know it was talked about a while ago, and as soon as I heard it, the idea of touring and going back to that, I think that's something special to rugby. It's something unique, and absolutely, I think it was a great idea, and to see it happen is going to be pretty special. I know there'll be a lot of Kiwis that'll be flooding across to try and be there and watch the games. And as you say, it's a special rivalry. We were lucky enough to play in it, to experience it, but absolutely that battle that happens on the field, but the respect that you all have for each other and the ability to sit down in the changing room. I know for myself personally, it was pretty it was unique, and I think people sense that, and that's why it is a great rivalry. So yeah, next year is going to be a great showpiece for the game, and I'm sure I'll do my best to get over there so that I can enjoy it as well.
Honestly, I don't know what I do. Well, the goal is by that time that I'm back in coaching again. So if I'm back in coaching next, I have no idea. Maybe I have to do a special contract or something like that, and just maybe some information for all the New Zealand travelers going to South Africa. Apparently, there is free accommodation in Cape Town. So all you just have to do is just put something out on social media, and all the Cape Townians will accommodate, seeing that it's a home game for the All Blacks when they travel to South Africa playing in Cape Town. But Conrad, we're going to start off very important. You have won 2 back-to-back World Cups, and on a serious note, which one was your favorite?
I don't know. It's like, who's my favorite child? I can't answer that. No, they were both special. I know a lot of the guys did. I mean, winning in New Zealand was special we've been through a lot of pain, not winning one since the very first in '87, and there was a lot of expectation, a lot of weight on our shoulders, and so I suppose that cut both ways. It sort of meant maybe we didn't enjoy it as much. It felt, I know Brad Thorne, his words, he said that it felt like it was our duty to win that one, and then so maybe when we went to England and for the first time to win one away from home for an All Black and to win a back-to-back. So there you enjoy that a bit more, but I don't know if I can pick a favourite. That would be unfair.
No, obviously that was no coincidence that it happened, being sometimes on the receiving side. And before I hand over to Ben, I know he's got a lot of questions, and Ben GPT is very strong in prompting when it comes to mindset.
I'm fascinated with it, it's drilling down into that. Yeah, carry on, bro.
So, facing you guys for so many years, and I must say, it's something which I really enjoy, the connection and playing against some unbelievable players. I mean, when I started out 2015 facing Tano Umanga, and also through the years, developing relationship with Jerry Collins, for example, God rest his soul, and some amazing players. It's just unbelievable, that rivalry. But what I will be honest with you, what really got me down and out was that times, those games, we were leading, we were in it, we were winning it, and then you guys do this black magic BS, and out of nowhere, score a try. Sorry for my language, what the fuck, man? Where does that come from? Where does that mindset come from that you guys had this ability, this unique skill to just pull it out of nowhere, staying in that fight? This is something that we are constantly talking about on this podcast, the ability to say, what was your guys' secret?
Yeah, look, I think that cut both ways as well. Like we always respected that about you guys, like the South Africans. You knew, I used to love the games, particularly the games in South Africa, and I'm sure you're the same, always getting asked on where's your favourite place to play or what was and I'm always, the easiest question to answer, because playing in South Africa, as much as I love playing at home in front of your home fans, the ultimate test for me personally, and as a rugby player, the way I saw it was playing at altitude. So Ellis Park, Loftus, those games against South Africa in a test match. It was just, you were in an arena and it was the ultimate test. And as far as, going the distance like that, that's what we knew. We were going and we would prepare well every time, because we knew what South Africa were going to deliver. And it was going to be the ultimate test. It was going to be physical. It was going to be fierce. You didn't know what to expect. Particularly, I felt like you guys always seemed to rise to that occasion and play your best and play open rugby at Loftus. It was always beautiful, hot weather, the altitude. There's something about playing at altitude where everyone's absolutely exhausted after 10 minutes and the sun's shining and you can pass the ball, from one side to the other. You talk about Mornay, the amount of games watching him kick it from one end to the other. But it's the greatest conditions for playing as a back. Maybe it was different to the forwards, because I know it can. But for me, it was that is what I would happily do. As a rugby player every day, if I could have played every game at altitude in the afternoon at Johannesburg or Pretoria, they were the ultimate test, and you knew they'd always go 80 minutes. If we decided to play 100 minutes, I'm sure the two teams would keep slogging it out for that long. It was just something you enjoyed. And look, I look back and you sort of started reflecting on careers. That's, as I said before, whenever I get asked about games or matches or opponents, it's always it's those moments that I quickly draw on, and there are a lot of great memories.
My favorite part was those beers in the locker room. I don't know if that tradition is still being upheld, but I remember the Franks brothers inviting me, hey G, come grab a beer, having a chat. And sometimes in the first time that happened to me, it felt all weird. It was like you're going to a school dance and you don't know who to talk to, you stand outside. But that was unbelievable. We actually looked forward to that, and it's something which we kept through Super Rugby as well. But now you open up that can of worms, being you made it clear to the audience that you are back and that you above the rest and above the forwards. And we recently had former teammates Charlie Firmino on here, Owen Franks and Ali Williams, and we asked them, what was the big mind shift change with the ABs? Because the back-to-back World Cups didn't happen by chance. Something happened and they shared their version. But I would like to hear, but what do you believe? What were the key changes that you guys made, which can be a massive learning for our audience that's listening or watching today?
I think from my perspective, with the World Cups, we probably appreciated for the first time just how different that tournament is. And that's something we had to confront. And I think of this leading into 2011 mainly because, as I said before, we'd lost all the World Cup since 87. And the majority of those, the All Blacks were favourites. So we'd gone in and we'd won a lot of tests leading into those. And I can speak to the build up to 2007. I was with the team then, and we were winning all the game. 05, 06 were incredible years for the All Blacks. But we came to a World Cup, and again we came unstuck at a quarterfinal that time, and it was out of the end of 2007 where we didn't sack the coaches. We didn't, we realised we'd done a lot of good stuff in the build up to that, but we just focused on, okay, what are we doing wrong? And it really centred on the fact that a Rugby World Cup is unique, and it's not like any other test. And so the French team we played in that quarterfinal in Cardiff, as it was they play completely different to the French team that we'd smashed in previous years, and we had to acknowledge that and actually realise that when we came to a World Cup, it is unique. And so I know that's all the messaging we gave. Like, we were in the build up to 2011, we were focusing on getting the rugby right, of course, doing all of that, being as good as we can be as All Blacks. But there was another part that we brought in, was just to focus on the pressure and everything that came with it around playing in a Rugby World Cup, and how we were going to deal with that mentally. And it played out in 2011 with injuries, because our preparation was, we didn't know what was going to go wrong. We didn't know what was going to be different, but this is a World Cup, and it's going to be different than the Bledisloe Cups and the Tri-Nations, because we'd shown we can win them, but that doesn't amount to anything at a Rugby World Cup unless you're prepared to adjust and get on top of those challenges that will arise. And as I say, and so we had injuries. We had Dan went down, we had Mills, Molina went down, Richie was struggling, Kieran was out, all our leaders, and that was that challenge. And I think as much as anything, it was that mental preparation we put into that 2011 World Cup, just to deal with challenges. And so when those things were happening, instead of us freezing and finding that as an excuse to, not play at our best, and maybe that's what's happened. I think that's what happened in 2007. And I can't speak for the other World Cups, but there was a trend there, an uncomfortable trend for the All Blacks. And so at that 2011, we were going to find a way to win and deal with that uniqueness and the new challenges that a World Cup would bring. And I think, we carried that through. And I see it now, watching World Cups, they are so unique. In South Africa, we can, you guys are the best at it. You have always, your acknowledgement of, and you almost thrive on that World Cup pressure, and you'll wait for that opportunity, which was a different mentality to the All Black way. Like, All Blacks are about every game, every test match. We want them to win all the time, whereas it was starting to understand you can still do that, but you've got to save something or still be able to treat the World Cup differently. And if there was one thing that's sort of what I, saw develop within our squad, and that was driven very much by the coaching team, who had been through the pain of losing one or two in some cases, and that was what they sort of steered us towards as the key to not making us not just a great rugby team, but a great team that's going to win a Rugby World Cup.
Hey, Conrad, I'd love to know, and this is hard to articulate, but from the outside, people could argue you had incredible generational talent with 5 or 6 guys, or who played more than 100 times for their country. But what sort of came first? Was it the fact that you had the stability that allowed those people to flourish and develop, and the cohesion because the coaches weren't fired and people didn't move on or go overseas and they wanted to stay? or was it sort of a combination of both that allowed them to flourish and develop and fulfill their potential?
Yeah, good, great question. I don't know the answer, unfortunately, but I'd say it's a bit of both. Like I think, and even now, in the years since there was a group obviously that stopped in 15, including Richie, Dan, Kevy, Tony Woodcock. Like there's a lot that were pretty. You talk about generational talent. And probably only now that a lot of us are appreciating just how special those players were, and to have them all in a group at the same time was always going to mean they were going to be we were going to be a special side. But there's definitely a lot to be said around the environment that was created to allow those guys to flourish. I think that's that can definitely be said, and because equally that coaching staff, like I think back particularly to the group we had at the start, Graham Henry, Steve Hansen, Wayne Smith, amazing coaches in their own right, and for those three to come together and work together just isn't done these days very often. And I don't know if it's egos or what that gets in the way, but head coaches all want to be head coaches, and they're very reluctant, even in a national setting, to work together just as those guys all did. And but that's what happened, and that's not to mention the other Mike Cron and other legends, Gilbert and Oka, like all of that management team we had. Were all amazing, and that to your question, that's very much a part of the environment they created. There was great people, and they allowed more great people to flourish because of that environment that we had at the time, and it extended a long time, and we saw the benefits of it, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just sort of flashback when you mentioned that just now. Didn't all the coaches swap roles? Like those three guys, Steve Hansen, Wayne Smith, and Graham Henry, didn't they swap? I think they swapped roles, or the areas they were coaching around that time as well. And that's parking your ego as well, isn't it? And I mean that takes a lot of, as you were saying, sort of a willingness to collaborate and not make it about yourself.
Yeah, and it was like I agree. Like even for me, thinking back to it, like I was there, and it was all about this. We very much subscribed to this view that we had to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and so that applied to the coaches as well. And they wanted to challenge themselves, and so that was done of their own accord. They decided, right, I think they'd done 4 years in the same roles, where Smithy was taking the backs. Steve was taking the forwards, and like, right, we're going to mix this up because we're all good coaches, and they just threw it on us as a team, and it made us uncomfortable. I remember I was there. We were going on a tour, and suddenly, Smithy wasn't the guy I was talking to. Steve Hansen. I was like, what? You're the forwards coach. What are you? And yes, I can do it. But that's what, they lived what they taught, and they were always telling us the same. And that was I think that, the sign of the respect we had for them, but a measure of them as coaches and that coaching team, that they could do that and pull that off. You could imagine if we had lost that, 3 or 4 of those games on tour, the fallout would have been huge, but they knew it was for the best for the team. And that's what, and I know it challenged them as individuals, because they had to work a whole lot harder. Like it scared them. And that's another thing we used to talk, like we used to play our best when we had an element of fear. Like if we were going to South Africa, there was something in our guts, there was a little bit of fear there. Like we knew we were in for a real battle, and that's when we'd play our best. When we were that complacency, when you suddenly think, oh, we're going to be okay here, bang, that's when you get tripped up. And the coaches knew that as well as the players, and they had to live that. And that was an example of them doing that, and that was sort of the way. We set that environment for the whole time those guys were in charge.
I can't imagine what the New Zealand public would have, if it hadn't worked out either, knowing how ruthless they can be, if it doesn't even bear thinking about, does it,
No, but man, like that's what they knew that, like they would have known that. They went in quite aware of how it could go wrong, but as I say, they obviously they were confident in the ability, and as they should be. That's what they ask of players all the time.
Yeah.
You play out of position. They were always making us uncomfortable, and we're asking a lot of players constantly. If you're a new player, you weren't given a cozy seat for too long. You were asked whether it was to present to the team on certain things. If you were a fly half, if you were a decision maker in the team, right, you're standing up in front of the team, you were going to be uncomfortable, but you can handle that because we trust you, we have confidence in you, and that builds you up, and so it's that same approach, and they just applied it to themselves.
Right.
Conrad, you mentioned a few things there, with the players that you guys had. You guys had some unbelievable players, and I do believe one of the reasons teams are successful is all around the leadership of a team. But, people have different definitions of leadership. People think it's about someone that is the guy shouting before a game, motivating. You got different types of leaders. If I look back at like our team with the Bulls and the Box, you had Victor Matfield, you had Farid Dupree, Brian Abana, you had Job Farid, John Smith. You had all these Jean de Villiers and Scott Berger, for example. He hardly said a word. That guy, he was unbelievable. He would drink like shitload of beers, wouldn't pick up any weight. He would just do a few sit-ups and lift a few dumbbells in the weight room. So he didn't gym at all. Same with Donnie or so, but he was our leader on the field. He was the guy that was there. He wasn't taking charge. So in your mind, if you can take us maybe a bit through the different leaders that you guys had in that generation and what their role was and what made them so great. Because everybody talks about the Dan Carter, the Richie McCaw, but I do believe guys like yourself, you were a leader in your team. Guys like Kieran Reid as well, for someone that I always found was composed, calm, humble. He was, he wasn't someone that was out there, but he was doing his job. If you can maybe highlight a few of the leaders in your generation that don't always get the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, and I mean the journey really started with Tana. Like Tana was the first captain. The team I was picked in 2004, and that's sort of seen by a lot of, I think, the players at the time, that the environment within the All Blacks changed. So the coaches I mentioned, Graham, Steve, Wayne, they'd been appointed after the Rugby World Cup. That hadn't gone too well. Another one that hadn't gone well for the All Blacks. And they'd had the 2004, they'd went through the Tri Nations that year with largely the same players, but I can't even remember. I don't think we'd won the Tri Nations 2004, but it was out the back of that they had seen enough that they wanted to make some serious changes to both the way the team operated off the field, on the field, and the players involved. And so that 2004 end of year tour, so the November tour, they picked, and that was included me, and I think we had about 12 or 13 debutants, new players. They made the decision. So this is when Dan Carter first played at 10. He'd previously been a midfield utility back. He was going to play at 10. Richie was given some captaincy duty, but Tana was very much the captain of the team and for that tour. And like Tana was, I'd played with him in Wellington at the Hurricanes, so I knew him already, but amazing leader, someone, the Māori word mana, and it doesn't really have a good English equivalent, but like he is all about mana, and it means you're holding your status within a team. And so Tana was someone, and you talk about Scott Berger as someone I've played against and know well as well. But I'd imagine they're very similar, because Tana, he didn't need to always speak. When he did speak, it was powerful, and you listened and you took note, but most of the time his leadership with actions, and you just followed him, and you wanted to go into battle, and he practiced what he preached, and you just followed his lead. So he was very much the kitten to start that, and he knew he didn't have much more in the game, but he wanted to lead this team into this sort of new transition, and he was, there was a young Richie McCaw. He had all these great leadership qualities, but Tana was very much going to carry this team through into that period, and he was a massive influence on my career. Tana, just the way he went about his work, as I said before, he realised you don't need to always speak things. It's often better left unsaid, and what he did with that team was massive. And so he was my first leader, and then sort of Richie came in after him, very different leader. Richie didn't necessarily, we're rugby players, so we're not necessarily orators that all love giving big speeches. That's probably just in the movies. But someone just intense professional, and wants you again to follow his lead. And so everything is done, and the signature and the trademark of Richie was his preparation, his thoroughness. And so I always, a guy that gave everything on the field would relax on a Sunday, and then Monday morning, the first guy out into the training field every time. It doesn't matter how battered his body is from the effort he's just given. He's out in the field and he's thinking about the next game, and his standards never drop. And so then you have the Richie McCaws, but you have the Kieran Reeds, and I think what most people, and I think you all understand this when you've played at the top level, and particularly in team sports, like there's leadership and then there's captaincy. So you never, when you talk about leadership, it should never be on one person. And like I think the point you're getting at is there is, even though I've talked about the Tana Umangas and the Richie McCaws, the success of the leadership within that in the time I played was the strength not just of those individuals, but the group around them. And, I don't mind admitting, I played my part in that. I was one of, 6 or 7 of us probably, and probably even more, but we all had our role, and Richie was very much our leader, and he was huge in terms of the standards that he set, but equally he relied on the Kevin Mialamu, the quiet guy, the Islander who had a different approach, but had a different connection with parts of the team. And I know that this is a big part of any team. You're not all one. Like, the strength of the team is the different cultures and the different individuals that you bring into the collective, and that's why you rely on a lot of people to do that. And we had guys like, even that I haven't mentioned, Ma'a and his leadership, Brad Thorne, who I mentioned before, like all very different individuals. And that's the beauty of rugby and the beauty of sport, that you have all of those, and you very much need, I think the best leadership groups have a strong figurehead, whether it's your Tana or your Richie, but you have that the diversity and the strength of a group around them, so that it's never falling on their shoulders. Leadership is a shared task, and it operates best when you've got a group around them.
Conrad, can you maybe give us a bit more insight? Thanks for sharing that. That's brilliant. I don't think we're going to, the way we're going here, this is going to be a 3-hour podcast. I'm joking. But no, thanks for that insight. And I think it's important for our audience to know leadership is different, and having that different aspects and different cultures within a team is what makes us unique and strong. We see that with South Africa, we see that with New Zealand. But I would like to know, what was your role in the leadership? What did you bring to the party in terms of helping that team? If you can just break it down a bit more for us in terms of what was your role as a leader in the team?
Yeah, I like, it's always hard talking about yourself. I used to think like I felt like I was the guy. I used to look at Richie, and I feel probably a few others and a lot of the team would look at Richie and think, man, he's an amazing leader, but I'm not sure I can do what he can do. And and a Dan Carter the same, like amazing leader, but he's a freak. Whereas I always felt like, I'm like anyone here. Like I've battled hard. I don't have amazing abilities. I don't have amazing skills. I just work really hard, and I love the team. I just fiercely competitive. And so, if anything, I could talk to the guys that came in that were little bit awestruck by the Richies and the Dans, and I could show them that, man, you don't have to be an amazing player. You don't have to think about scoring 50-meter tries, kicking drop goals, doing all those superstar things within a game. We actually need, within a team, we need people that just do their role, do it really well, do it every time. And you can be a support player. You can run off the shoulder of the Matanonus. That's what I used to talk about. I made a career just running off amazing players. You can do that. Your team needs those players. You can't all be the guys who go busting goals. Yeah, exactly. So I think, as I say, within a leadership, you need different qualities. You need different personalities. And I felt like, that was very much like my role. Often I didn't mind talking, and I'd always talk to the guys about, as much as, we want, and we're a team of some blessed with superstar qualities, we still back ourselves as All Blacks. We're just going to do the little things really well, and we're going to back up and do them time and time again. And that's what will get us a result, as much as the, amazing stuff that'll get shown in the highlights after the game. There's going to be a whole lot of little tasks that just get done, whether it's chasing kicks, whether it's just making tackles, supporting players, all of that needs to happen. And I was happy giving that message and just reinforcing that all the time within the team.
Hey, Conrad, I'd love to know how you managed the pressure, or if you felt pressure, because you talk about being so competitive there, but also I've heard you reference before about being really well balanced, and just, when you were growing up, it wasn't sort of, you weren't predestined to become an All Black. People didn't think that guy's going to become an All Black. But then, as you probably went down that journey and you got closer and closer, did you feel the pressure building up, or did you just stay chilled about it?
Yeah, I think, you can't help but feel that, and you're right, and it's a bit of a journey, and I felt, and I think everyone feels this at the start of your career. It can be quite easy, because everything's just, when something happens and an opportunity comes along and you jump at it, and it's great, and if it works out, then there's that. It's when the expectation then follows. That's when the pressure builds, and that can get on top of players. And I'm sure there were times when it did get on top of me. I just think I've probably, due to my background, and I came through with where I was quite late. I was 22, 23 before I made the All Blacks, and before that, rugby wasn't seen, I think, particularly from outsiders, as a genuine option for me. I left school, I studied, I wasn't in any academy or national program, and so that actually helped me keep that perspective, I think, and it was always just it was just one more opportunity to play for the All Blacks and play another year, and I never let the expectation build too much, but it's an ongoing challenge, and anyone that's playing, and it's not just rugby, that's elite level sport, we'll talk about that, is that expectation and the pressure that builds, and the expectation you put on yourself to keep performing at a high level. But I certainly think that a balance and perspective, which is often developed through your childhood, and how you sort of enter the game, is an essential part of how you deal with that through your through your career.
Yeah, 100%. You know, just then you just mentioned people outside didn't necessarily expect you to become an All Black. When did it become something that you thought this actually might happen? Or is it always something you thought this could happen?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, that's why it was different. And I say that on people outside because I think part of me always felt I could do it. I mean, I don't think I would ever tell anyone that, but I just felt like I do think it changed a little bit. I say, like, playing through high school, you know, you dream, because when you're young, that's what's so great, isn't it? Like, you don't think of reality. You're going to be an All Black. You don't think it through that there's 10,000 other kids with the same dream and they all think of the same thing. But I think what helped me, and I when I got to university, and although I wasn't playing at a national level, I was starting to realize that the stronger the team that I made, the way I played the game, I was always going to look better, because I was because I valued supporting other players. If I kept making teams, I'd keep looking better. And I wouldn't put that pressure on myself to suddenly have to play better because my teammates are better. Does that make sense? Like,
100%.
But I know once I grabbed onto that, it was a massive asset for me as a player. And I remember being sort of 19, 20, and I think I'd made a club side, and we had a lot of players who were professional players that went out and played Super Rugby. And the way it was back then, if they missed the playoffs, they would come back and play in the club. And we would get these players, and man, the difference it made just for me to be next to them. Like, I was the same player, but suddenly I had these superstars next to me, and I was like, this is actually quite easy, not in an arrogant way, but in a confident way. I was like, man, if I just keep doing this, I can, and then, sure enough, because you're surrounded by good players, and this is what, I feel fortunate. I was in Wellington, and then I made the Hurricanes, and then, made the All Blacks. But each time the players alongside me were better again, Suddenly I had Dan Carter, Tana Umaga next to me, and I'm just going to keep doing my thing, and I'm just going to look even better because these guys are just going to keep, setting me up. So I think that certainly helped, and it just kept, I just kept a very simple outlook on the game and how I was going to play it. And I don't think I overcomplicated. I'd never expected myself to be a superstar. It was my role just to play alongside them. That was the way I figured.
Conrad, you touched base, and I think we need to address this because probably one of the greatest center pairings in the world, yourself and Manon, was unbelievable. I remember. I remember when I saw Mark for the first time. I said, like, this is a solid prop, man. He's a fit prop, man. And I saw that, like, that's number one. He's a 2. He's a 12 there. But wow, you guys were brilliant together and lethal as a unit. Takes me back to the Jean de Villiers for Jacques Fourie as well. That combination. But I would like to know that chemistry between the two of you. Was it communication? Was it just that vibe between you guys? Or were you just playing off his scraps?
Probably the latter. No,
No joking.
I get asked this a lot. I honestly think from the key part was individually we were just hugely motivated. Like, we wanted to be great players in our own rights, and like, we were rivals for the first 4 years. Like, we both wanted to be the centre that played with Tana, and it meant we weren't mates straight away. It was quite an interesting relationship, and it wasn't like we talk about. Ma'a debuted with the All Blacks before me, 2003. He was involved. It wasn't until 2008 that we actually played together as a 12-13, because up until then there was Tana, there were other midfielders. Ma'a played on the wing. They were trying to find the best position for Ma'a. And then, so we had a lot of time where, we, as I say, were competitors competing for the same spot. And so we just had, I think, to start with, massive individual motivation to be great players and to be great All Blacks. So that I think was the first part. And then when we came together, I think, again, you talk about the coaching, the influence of guys I've already mentioned. They made us understand that that's only a starting point, and at international level, the combination that we create is going to take us from, a good All Black pairing to a great All Black pairing. And when we understood that, and then when it was put in that way, and say, all right, this is actually going to help us achieve what we want to achieve as individuals, then we set out becoming, a good partnership. And look, by that stage, in rugby, you're becoming good mates anyway. And even though, we are completely different individuals in terms of our upbringing, and that's what's great, again, about rugby. He's my best mate now, yet here's a boy from Rongotai, Wellington, a Samoan boy, brought up in a Samoan family, me, European, come down as a university student, and this is how I meet him. And then, now with them, I catch up with them every year, families know each other, that's the result of rugby. But I think the journey we had was very much individuals that then understood, right, we're going to get further as individuals if we work together, and it's going to help the team, which was always massive for us. The All Blacks always, and the Hurricanes were teams that we loved, we wanted to do well, and then it was just a matter of understanding each other as players, and that's why, communication is a funny one, because often the best stuff is the stuff that you don't need to say. I'd play with Ma'a, and look, I talk all the time on the rugby field, but the most important stuff was just the instinctual things that I knew. Every time playing with Ma'a, I knew before he would do something what he was going to do, and I knew where I'd have to be to make the most of that opportunity. And I'm sure he'd say the same about myself, but it took time, and we had the benefit of a lot of years together. So a lot of games, a lot of trainings. There were times we probably got sick of each other, but that's how you forge a good relationship. And that's ultimately sort of where we got to.
That it's interesting that you say that instinctively you guys were so complementary. It's because you guys were you made the effort to know each other. I mean, you knew exactly what he was going to do, a certain movement, stepping left, stepping right. You knew exactly where to be. And it was similar with Fourie Dupree and Brian Abana. They would just think, Fourie would kick it, and the next thing you see Brian Abana dash, boom, just go. And what the hell, where did he come from? And I feel it's something which has kind of been lost in the modern game. I think sometimes players are being fed so much information that sometimes they lost this ability to scan, to anticipate what their teammates going to be doing. I think it's great to hear that in terms of, what you guys, but the question I want to ask you is that before I hand over to Ben, because we want to switch it up a little bit, because we're going really deep and it's really great, really enjoy it, because we're hearing things which we haven't read before or heard before on podcasts. So thanks for sharing that with us. But I think you made a key point there where you were a university player, a student, and you didn't follow the classic pathway, being in the national academies, being an assistant. In France, we use the word le déclic, you know it as well. You played in Pau. What was that thing that made it switch? Was it just you had this opportunity, all these players came down, and you showed that you can exist with them and potentially be even better than them? What made the difference for you? Because there are a lot of players out there that don't go the classic route. We've had a guy like Joe Gray. He had a database of emailing teams and coaches. He played for England, played for Harlequins and Saracens. So it's just so that the younger audience can you know what? I might not be in academy right now, but if I tick certain boxes, I can still achieve my goals.
Yeah, and like the point you make, because when you talk about instincts and their ability to read a game, like that's hard to measure, and that's what you talk about. There's a real focus on things that in academies particularly, and I see that, and it does concern me. I'm sure that there are still good coaches that look beyond numbers, but I do know that there is a real emphasis, and you see it in American sports where you have, you get in a whole bunch of young players and they measure their 5-meter sprint and their bench press and their all of these things that are easy because they're easy to take the numbers, and then they're almost picking a team out of that. Yet, how do you measure the way you read another player? And because that's what I did, that was my game, and that was what I felt was my point of difference. I could read what players, whether it was Ma'a or Dan but whoever it was, I relied on my instincts to see what they were going to do and know where I was going to be to make best of that opportunity. And equally, if I was watching the opposition, I'd pride myself on my ability to almost know what they were going to do just from the body language and the shape, and you could watch video and you'd start to work out trends with certain players. And so and that's huge advantage, and that doesn't matter how quick you are or how strong you are. If you can actually read what other players are doing and what your own players are doing, the speed of thought is actually going to more than make up for the lack of speed that I can run, and it's a really good point. And I think, for me, I suppose, again, when I think back to my journey, it was in that university time when I realized for myself that these things that I had in my game, look, I didn't know how far it was going to take me, but it didn't matter that I wasn't as strong and big and fast as the other guys. There was something that I had that, was still going to give me a shot at getting far in rugby, and I was going to back myself.
That's fascinating, Conrad, because one of the questions actually G and I were talking about earlier was, the comparison. We were talking about comparison and how it's so easy for young players to get caught up. They get in an environment and they see somebody else. They go, that guy can lift that guy can run that guy does that. And they get caught up trying to compare with the person in their position. And they don't just look, okay, what's my skill set? What can I do? And so when you were getting into that, you were almost like that. You've described it almost like a glue type player. You were bringing the best out of everybody around you. You were in that cohesion. But when you got in that Hurricanes environment, how did you avoid that comparison? Were you just so self-confident in what you had and what you brought to the table, or how did you not think, wow, I've got to be do that Tana does and do that like Ma?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And do you know what? I think I still remember Tana telling me, do what you do well. Like that was his thing to me. And I fell into that trap numerous times, because particularly when I first came in to the Hurricanes. So my first year, I didn't start a single game. And so I came in, I was a very much a project. Like I hadn't been in the gym hardly at all. So I knew I wasn't expecting a lot of game time, but I was behind, Tana, Ma'a with the midfield. And I think I fell into that trap of like, how am I going to get into, compete at this level when I am so much lighter and weaker and slower and less powerful. But it was someone like Tana, that saw something in me, and those were his words. And he probably doesn't even remember saying it to me, but I'd still talk about it when people ask me, what was the best bit of advice you got? And it was Tana saying to me, do what you do well. And it was his way of saying, look, don't try and be me. Like, you're never going to be me, but you can still, rugby, the beauty of rugby, there are parts to the game. There is no perfect answer, and you can still add in your own way to the team being better. So,
Yeah.
and that's probably what set me off. And it was something I still had to remind myself all the time, because when your form starts lagging and you think, I've got to get faster, got to get stronger, and which is true. You still got to work hard on those things, but there are other parts to rugby that you're going to be unique for, and that's what you got to focus on.
It's so important like that, isn't it, G? We talk about that often, just, keep finding out what you're strong at and then amplifying that, and it's almost like you sort of identified from a very early age, like, because people are like, oh, you've got to be either running, or you got to be a good distributor, or you got to be this, and that's your X factor. But not many people talk about, okay, well, I'm going to be the guy that holds everything together. I'm going to be the guy that, brings out the best of everybody. I'm going to read the game the best. I'm going to support the best. They're not normally identified as the key traits, are they? It's fascinating. Conrad, who did you look up to when you were growing up? Did you, was it just rugby players, or what, and if so, who was it in the All Blacks?
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of players, again, because I probably didn't see many that I could sort of model myself on. But I mean, look, I grew up watching like Steenkamp, Brock, Sean Fitzpatrick, like they were the greats. John Kerwin, all guys I've since met and are all great ambassadors and legends of the game. But that was very much that All Black team was one I aspired to, but there was in all sports. Like I was a kid that loved all sports and loved. There was no individuals I loved, and again, this is probably a reflection of myself. Like I just love people that gave their all. So it wasn't always the superstars. I didn't have posters of superstars. I loved guys that I saw and I could identify with, and they just went out and put their heart and soul into it and did their best for the team. So that they were the ones that I always had a lot of respect for.
Conrad, one of the big things, and I'll tell a listener, it's unbelievable just watching you light up when you speak, when you're talking about these memories. It's intoxicating, and it just shows your level of humility that you have as well. When you speak about Tana, I mean, you're a legend in your own right. Yes, Tana was a great player as well. You won back-to-back World Cups, but the way you light up and you speak and showing the respect towards him, it's unbelievable. And I think the message, Ben, that he gets across, which was like, we all have different pathways or different journeys, but if you got that hunger, that desire, despite what the stats, I mean, I almost didn't get picked for the Springbok under 20 teams, and at the stage Jake didn't want to play for the Boks because I couldn't bench or squat without. I mean, I had this weird I got this massive chest, skinny legs, I look like Humpty Dumpty that sat on the wall, got a break, he broke and anything. But anyway, the difference is this Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall and had a great fall, but instead this Humpty Dumpty broke the fucking wall, so that was different. I believed in my ability to run through walls and break shit and go hard. So that's very inspiring. I want to shift this conversation a little bit because we delved into a lot there, and once again, Ben, we've gone off track. But that's your fault, God, because you have shared stuff with us, which we haven't come across before. We've done our research, so really be grateful for that. Lawyer, all right. So I think this is the thing with have you followed the journey of one of our favorites, Steve? Series War Love Suits? Are you a Harvey Specter? What type of guy, what type of lawyer are you at the moment? Are we seeing the Harvey Specter vibe in you at the moment, helping players? So tell us, what have you been up to since stop playing rugby?
Yes, I finished over in France, and I did a little bit of coaching. I sort of knew, like, as you play, you do end up, particularly towards the end of your career, when you've had a long career, which I was fortunate enough to have, you end up coaching a fair bit. And so naturally your sort of thoughts start to stray into thinking, oh, what would it be like? Could it be for me? And to be honest, I always had reservations about it. And so I deliberately only took a very small role with the club that I finished with, but I really enjoyed the club. I wanted to stay involved, but at the same time, I had worked a lot with player associations in through New Zealand, I was always the player rep because I'd done a law degree. So even though I was a young player, normally player reps are the 10-year veterans, but they were like, you're a law grad, you're our player rep. So I'd done a lot of work and really respected and enjoyed the work player associations did. New Zealand's got a very strong player association. So when I went to France, it was a little bit more difficult. They had Prevail there, but, my French wasn't up to it. So I had started working with international rugby players who were the player association representing international players with World Rugby. And so they were based in Dublin. And that was, so I did some coaching and then some work with the player association there. And that was, it was not a legal role, but it was, relying on a lot of my legal training because of the work that they do is sort of advocate for players around their legal rights and contracts, but also welfare rights and everything else. So that's sort of how it started. And then I think through time doing both, I just naturally sided towards the work with the player association coaching. Although I enjoyed it, just wasn't for me. It's tough. It's hard. It requires a certain personality, and I just felt I was more suited to the role in the suit with the player association, and that's what it's sort of grown from a sort of a part-time role to full time, and I've moved back to New Zealand and carried on the role with International Rugby Players Association, as we are now called, and our office is in Dublin, but we obviously are an international organisation, so I can actually work from here. And it's been it's been a great, interesting, fascinating journey seeing that side of it, but one I've really enjoyed.
Conrad, and obviously. You mentioned there quite a few things, in terms of the player welfare, and and I do believe you're not just there because of your law degree. I think you do. I do believe it's the traits you have, the skill set you had, and the way you are with people around you. And I've been noticing you've been doing a lot of work as well with the Global Rugby Players Foundation. And if I tell me if I'm getting wrong, it's about helping former players, start a new career or help them with projects. We all experience life after rugby different. It's tough for everybody, whichever way it is, whether it's financially or whether it's you losing your identity. I remember when I started doing consulting, whether it was for the Scrum or going into the corporate space, I didn't know how to go from it. I would just put a post on social media. You want to improve your Scrum, send me a DM. Or you know what, I'm available for public speaking if you're looking for someone. And you're kind of lost. You're all over. So if you can tell us a bit more about what you guys are doing, what are you guys doing at the moment to help former rugby players, and what are the big challenges that they are facing?
Yeah, so the foundation, I suppose, started with trying to face the exact problem you've talked about. And it was one that I'd seen within player associations for a long time, and that was players coming out of particularly the professional game. And I think this is something that's important when we talk about this, because we realise that in the amateur game, because it was amateur and players often worked as well as played, when they finished, it was actually not, it's still tough. You still lost the game you love, but you'd actually already had this other life that coexisted with rugby, and you just carry that on. But as professionalism came in, and particularly now as professionalism sort of grows, and now we're capturing kids 16, 17 into academies, and the bubble, if we call it that, becomes even greater in terms of the provisions that players have now, and everything that's sort of wrapped around them as a player. So some of them from 16 to 33, they're looked after so well, which is amazing. They're well paid, they're well looked after, everything's done for them. But that transition then becomes even more challenging. And we see this in American sports, where the anomaly is that the more well you are rewarded during your career, the harder it is to then come out of that. So you can earn millions playing in the NBA. You come out of that and they are completely lost. And the statistics around bankruptcy and marriage failure and all of that and the most high-paid sports in the world are scary to look at. And so you then bring that to rugby and we're trying to think, how do we help guys, particularly as the game becomes more and more professional, to actually deal with this transition and to understand that actually there is so much that you learn as a rugby player that sets you up really, really well for life after rugby. Like to be in a high pressure environment like rugby players are, it's a tough environment to be in, but you learn all sorts of ways to manage that. So you manage the stress, you manage the discipline required, and you learn all of these mechanisms. You are perfectly suited to go into whatever you want, whether it's coaching, but more for me, because I like the idea of going to business, going into all sorts of other areas where you can use all those skills, but it's actually just educating players around how to do that. And you're your example is exactly the same as 90% of players. You just lost. You don't know what to do. And so player associations and the foundation, which is now being set up, is just trying to target that area and setting up programs that firstly bring players together, because as we said right at the start, the first thing you miss is your connection. You for 15 years, if you've played that long, 5 years, whatever it's been, you had a team around you every single day and you do everything as a team, and that's brilliant and you love it. And then suddenly you feel like, even though that's what we're trying to challenge, but you feel like you're all on your own and you don't have your team around you and you get stuck. And a lot of us do. And we feel like we just need help and we need a connection. So the first bit is getting that connection and showing each player when they finish their career, right, there's hundreds like you doing the same thing and it's okay. And it's going to be challenging. It's going to be tough, but we've got people around you. And this is the next bit. We want the support of personnel. Player associations are well equipped. If they have the funding, they can provide, and this is what we've seen now around the world, they are employing people specifically to do that role. Bring players as they finish the game, bring them together, talk to them individually. It's not a one size fits all. It's not as if everyone will want to be a coach or everyone will want to go be a policeman or a lawyer or a caretaker. We don't know, but there's no reason why you can't finish your rugby playing career and straight away find a new meaning in your life that's going to help you deal with the loss that you will face, the loss that is inevitable of not being in a rugby team and getting up each day and playing each Saturday. We can't give you that back, unfortunately, but we can still give you, you can still live a great life and have great relationships and carry on enjoying your family and doing all that stuff. So that's, in a nutshell, what the foundation's trying to do. And it's only just been 18 months, I think, that it's been going, but it's working really hard. And it's a space that, as you say, we need. Every sport is struggling in this area, but I want rugby, particularly the values of rugby, is about helping your mates, supporting your mates. Yeah. And so I just think I would love rugby to be world leading in this, being this foundation to be better than anyone else, and other sports looking at us thinking, man, I wish we had that.
Oh, it's brilliant, and I definitely hope that you guys will be providing former rugby players with courses on how to develop AI agents, because I tried to develop an AI agent last night to help the workflow for coaches, and that's 2 hours I'll never get back. It's still not working. I still have to figure that, but it was quite interesting, and but yeah, I think it's brilliant, and I really appreciate what you guys do. I think it's important. It's so true that you said, Ben and myself, we talk a lot about what we've learned as rugby players. Sometimes we take on something new like I'm now in this mindset in terms of optimizing my workflow for us in the podcast and all my other different stuff. I'm serious, actually. I'm in the process of developing an AI agent, and also one now for coaches as well,
Yeah.
to help them and, free up time. But yeah, Ben, I'm going to hand it over to you.
No, it's
because I know
so
you've got a
true,
few more
G. No,
questions before we
like
sign
with
off.
the transition, I really struggled, but it was an ongoing thing. And then it was the lack of purpose, or not having the shared purpose, and the community, and those 30 minutes after a game in the cloaks, in the changing rooms, when you're with those guys, that you know, that special time, and lots of other things, isn't it? And finding that purpose again, and the routine and all these things. We hear it often, don't we? But yeah, it's been incredible, Conrad. I think we're running out of time, unfortunately. We could sort of pick your brain for hours, and I feel like we're only getting started. but we got to let you crack on with your day. Conrad, just to wrap it up, I'd love to know, if you could go back in time and change one thing or change something, would you do anything differently to, that you've done in the last how many years?
Oh, it's a good question. You know what? I went to France when I didn't have much expectation to play. I sort of went. I decided I couldn't play. I didn't want to commit to the All Blacks anymore. I just started a family. It's 4 months away. I think my last year as an All Black. So I just thought, look, my body was fine, but I just knew I wanted to give more time to my family, and so France actually appealed, and I was blown away by how much I enjoyed playing overseas, and I always entertained the thought, because I would never want to give back any of my test matches that I played for the All Blacks, but I also would have liked to play longer in France. So I don't know how I answer that. I suppose I just wish I could have played for 20 years rather than 15, and I could have had another 3 or 4 years in France, just because I just think the experience of playing overseas is amazing, and in this part of the world, everyone thinks, oh, you're taking a paycheck, or you're going to France because you can't make it in New Zealand, like that's sort of but actually the experience is so rewarding and so brilliant that I think it's missing the truth to a large extent. So it's just what rugby can offer. It's another amazing thing that you travel the world. If you're lucky enough to play internationally, you travel the world, but then to also apply your trade in other parts of the world as well. It's something that we're all pretty fortunate to experience. But yeah, it does cross my mind whether I could have had more time overseas, but not sure how I would have fitted that in.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Oh,
It's G.
no, Conrad. Yeah, no, it's been brilliant. Now, I just want to say thanks for taking this time, and we've gone way over the time but once again, when you're speaking to amazing people, and not just as a rugby player, but as a human being, thanks for sharing. There's so much there, and we spoke to some of your former teammates. I just want to make this clear to the audience, not because you were a backline player that we got more out of you tonight, all right? It's just a human being. We're all different shapes and sizes. But yeah, Conrad, thanks for everything, for taking the time. But most importantly, thanks for what you're doing in the different player associations as well, and also with the Global Rugby Organization as well, helping former rugby players, finding their way, giving them purpose. And if there's anything that we can do to help, please let us know and reach out to us. And just thanks, and much blessings to you and the family, and take care, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Appreciate it. Always good to connect with former players, huh?
Yeah, awesome, man.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Conrad.